The laughter started before she even reached the stage. A trembling 13-year-old girl, wearing an oversized faded uniform and shoes that didn't match, walked toward the microphone as whispers curled around the school auditorium like smoke. Students nudged each other, snickering, because they all knew the truth: her name had been put on the list as a joke. A poor girl who barely spoke, whose father worked late shifts as a cleaner, someone who obviously couldn't sing. But when she lifted her eyes from the floor, the harsh stage lights revealed something no one expected: a storm of fear, courage, and quiet resilience fighting inside her. And in the third row, a single dad with tired eyes and calloused hands clenched his fists, praying silently for a miracle, knowing his daughter had a voice the world had never heard. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for those who are underestimated, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. It truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. Her name was Era, and ever since she was little, singing had been her safe place. Her father, Daniel, a single dad raising her alone since her mother passed away, used to hum lullabies while cleaning late-night offices, and Era would curl up beside him, absorbing the rhythm of his life through music. But as she grew older, the world grew harsher. Kids teased her for wearing the same sweater every winter, for bringing homemade snacks instead of store-bought ones, for walking to school in patched-up shoes. She learned to shrink herself so she wouldn't be seen, believing that staying invisible was safer than facing their cruelty. But she sang at home, softly, secretly, like a bird too afraid to fly in daylight. Daniel noticed everything: the extra-long pauses in her stories about school, the way her shoulders stiffened when she mentioned certain classmates, the fear in her eyes whenever a school activity required volunteers. He worked double shifts at a garage during the day and stacked shelves at a small store at night, doing everything in his power to give Era the life she deserved. He never let her see how exhausted he was, how much he struggled, how many times he went hungry just so she could have a full plate. In his eyes, she was the only beautiful thing he had left in a world that had taken too much from him already. When the school announced its annual talent day, Era shrank into her seat, hoping no one would notice her. But a group of students did. They whispered, smirked, and wrote her name on the sign-up sheet behind her back. When her name was announced during the morning assembly, the entire hall filled with laughter. Era felt her face burn as she ran home in tears, collapsing into her father's arms. She begged him to talk to the school, to take her name off the list, to save her from humiliation. But Daniel, with a softness worn down by years of struggle, asked her a question she didn't expect. Do you want them to decide what you're capable of, Era? Or do you want to show them? She thought about it for 2 nights, unable to sleep. Fear gnawed at her chest, yet something in her father's voice, his faith, his certainty, stayed with her. In the quiet of their small apartment, she finally whispered that she wanted to try. She wanted to be brave. Even if she failed, she wanted to step onto that stage with her father watching. Over the next week, they practiced in their tiny living room. Daniel cooked simple meals while humming along, encouraging her with tired smiles as she rehearsed. They couldn't afford proper equipment, so he borrowed a small speaker from a coworker and taped it together with old wires. When she hit high notes, the speaker crackled, but Daniel never let the imperfections matter. He stood in front of her with admiration in his eyes, telling her again and again that she had a gift, a voice that could make the world pause. But the world rarely pauses for the poor. The day of the performance arrived with cold winds and heavy clouds. Era walked into school clutching her father's hand, praying her legs wouldn't give out. Students pointed, whispered, and laughed, already anticipating the embarrassment they expected her to bring. Teachers didn't intervene; they had seen the teasing for months, but poverty often makes people invisible. Daniel sat quietly in the audience, wearing the same shirt he wore to job interviews years ago, washed and ironed as neatly as he could manage. He didn't have money for a ticket, so he had volunteered to help arrange chairs just so he could sit inside and support her. One by one, confident performers took the stage, dancers in glittering costumes, singers with polished voices, students cheered on by their friends. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Era denial. Snickers filled the room. Phones lifted, ready to record her humiliation. Her hands trembled as she stepped forward, and for a moment, she nearly turned around. But then she saw him, her father, eyes filled with love, hope, and unwavering belief. She took a shaky breath and stood a little taller. The music began. At first, her voice was soft, almost fragile, like a candle flickering in wind. Some students laughed under their breath. But then she reached the second line, her mother's favorite line from the lullaby Denial used to sing, and something inside her shifted. Her fear loosened its grip. Her voice rose, steady and pure, filling every corner of the auditorium with a richness no one expected. Each note soared higher than the last until the laughter died, replaced by stunned silence. It wasn't just singing. It was a confession of years spent hiding, a cry from a heart that had been bruised but never broken, a melody shaped by grief, love, and resilience. Her voice trembled in the air like a story unfolding, and everyone in the room felt it, the sincerity, the rawness, the truth. Even the students who mocked her lowered their phones. By the time she reached the final note, the entire hall was frozen. Her voice lingered long after the music stopped, echoing inside the stunned silence that followed. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. Then the applause erupted. It started from the back, a teacher wiping her eyes, and then spread like wildfire through the room. People stood up, clapping, cheering, shouting her name. Denial covered his face with his hands as tears slipped through his fingers. For the first time in years, he felt something break inside him, not pain, but overwhelming pride. A father who had spent his life believing he wasn't enough finally saw proof that he had done something right. Era looked out at the crowd, disbelief shining in her tear-wet eyes. All those years of being overlooked, mocked, dismissed, suddenly felt like distant echoes. Today, she was seen. Today, she was heard. And the world that once felt too heavy now seemed full of color and possibility. After the event, teachers gathered around her, praising her talent. Students who had laughed now avoided her gaze, guilt burning in their faces. The principal asked to meet her father, offering her a scholarship for music training, recognizing the extraordinary voice she possessed. It was the first break their small family had ever received, the first time their poverty hadn't been a barrier but a stepping stone to something brighter. Denial held her tightly as they walked home, promising her that this was only the beginning. And for the first time in her young life, Era believed it. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support truly helps these emotional stories reach more people who need them. Before we end this story, here's a special request: comment below what moment made you emotional. And finally, remember this: sometimes the world laughs at you before it applauds you. But all it takes is one brave step, one voice, one person who believes in you, to change everything.